What if the most painful part of unanswered prayers is not the silence you feel from the sky, but the quiet confusion it creates inside your heart? Because so many sincere people pray, cry, wait, and still feel unseen, unheard, and slowly start wondering what they're doing wrong. Whether Allah is displeased, whether their faith is weak, or whether dua even works anymore. And this silent doubt is one of the deepest emotional wounds in modern Muslim life, because when prayers feel unanswered, the heart doesn't just ache. It begins to question safety, trust, and meaning. And surface level answers often make this worse, telling you to be patient, to have more faith, to make dua properly, without ever addressing the psychological and spiritual reality of what it feels like to hope deeply and wait painfully. And Islam does not dismiss this pain, it speaks directly to it. Because the Quran never promises that dua is answered in the way you imagine. It promises that dua is never ignored, and there is a critical difference between the two that most people are never taught to understand. Because psychologically, we approach dua like a transaction. I ask, I wait, I receive, and when the outcome doesn't match the request, the mind interprets this as rejection. But Islam reframes dua not as a demand, but as a relationship, where the response is shaped by wisdom you cannot yet see, and this is where the heart often struggles, because waiting without clarity activates fear, doubt, and helplessness, especially in a world that teaches instant gratification and visible results. And Allah addresses this directly when He reminds us that He responds to the caller when they call. But response does not always mean immediate fulfillment. It can mean redirection, protection, delay, or transformation. And this is deeply psychological, because often what you ask for is shaped by what you think will heal you, while Allah responds to what will actually protect you. And many unanswered prayers are not signs of deprivation, but of unseen mercy, where something harmful, limiting, or premature is quietly withheld. And yet the heart struggles because it equates love with giving, when sometimes love is withholding. And from an Islamic psychological lens, there are several inner states that can block us from recognizing how dua is being answered. The first is attachment to a specific outcome, because when the heart becomes fixated on one form of relief, it becomes blind to all other forms of response. And Islam repeatedly teaches detachment, not to remove desire, but to soften insistence, so the heart can remain open and trusting, rather than tense and demanding. The second is internal misalignment, where the tongue asks for something the heart is not prepared to hold, because dua is not just words, it is orientation. And sometimes Allah delays the response until the inner world is reshaped to receive it without being harmed by it. The third is hidden timing, because many prayers are answered in seasons you could not survive earlier. And psychology confirms that premature fulfillment can overwhelm identity, destabilize emotions, and create dependence rather than growth. And Allah's timing protects the heart from receiving blessings it would misuse, misunderstand, or lose. The fourth is the transformation of the one who prays, because sometimes dua is answered by changing you instead of changing the situation, strengthening your patience, refining your intention, deepening your trust. And this inner shift often becomes the foundation for later external change. And the fifth is misunderstanding silence, because silence from Allah is not absence, it is space. Space for growth, reflection, and reliance, and many people unknowingly abandon dua at the moment it is reshaping them most deeply. And the Prophet taught that a believer's dua is always answered, either by giving what was asked, by removing harm, or by storing reward for the hereafter. And this teaching was never meant to be a consolation prize. It was meant to expand your understanding of what an answer looks like. Because if every dua were answered exactly as requested, the heart would become entitled rather than trusting, and faith would turn into expectation rather than surrender. And this is why unanswered prayers often hurt the ego before they heal the soul, because they confront the illusion of control and invite the heart into deeper reliance. And practically, how do you live with unanswered prayers without becoming bitter or distant? The first step is honesty in dua, because Allah does not ask you to perform faith. He invites you to bring your confusion, frustration, and exhaustion to Him without filters. The second step is releasing conditions, where you continue to pray without setting emotional ultimatums, because conditional dua turns relationship into negotiation. The third step is aligning effort with prayer, because dua without action creates stagnation, and action without dua creates arrogance. And Islam holds both together. The fourth step is learning to recognize subtle answers, shifts in perspective, unexpected ease, delayed harm, emotional resilience. Because not all answers arrive loudly. And the fifth step is redefining success in prayer, where success is not getting what you want, but remaining connected even when you don't. Because the greatest loss is not an unanswered dua, it is a hardened heart that stops asking. And if you are watching this with a heavy chest, feeling like you've been waiting too long, crying too quietly, or hoping to carefully, know that unanswered prayers do not mean you are forgotten. They often mean you are being protected, prepared, or redirected. And Sacred Solutions exists to help you understand Islam not as a system of pressure, but as a framework for emotional and spiritual healing. So pause for a moment and reflect on what you've been asking for, and what you may have been spared from. And if you're ready to learn how Islamic wisdom can help you trust Allah even in the silence, subscribe and continue this journey with us. Because sometimes the most powerful answer to a prayer is the heart you become while waiting.